China has achieved a great deal over the past 70 years. Its economy is the second largest in the world. Its mid-income population has surpassed the entire population of the U.S. China is building 3 megacities around Beijing, Shanghai, and Guangdong province. But that's the past. 2020 will see a new chapter in China's history, a bold vision for its future. The country is about to eradicate all absolute poverty among its 1.4 billion people and achieve what it calls a moderately well-off society. What challenges will China face? What obstacles lie ahead? Watch our special series on Closer to China, China 2020, Vision and Challenges. We appreciate the past in order to anticipate the future. As we commence 2020, a pivotal year, it is a moment to reflect. When the People's Republic of China was established in 1949, its economic foundation was very weak. In 1952, China's GDP was only 68 billion yuan, around $25 billion, less than 1% of world GDP. Start from scratch, a Chinese idiom, describes well the starting story of the PRC. 70 years later, in 2019, China's GDP is over $14 trillion, accounting for more than 15% of world GDP. In nominal terms, China has the second largest economy in the world. In purchasing power parity terms, China's economy is already the largest in the world. China's GDP in 2018 was 175 times higher than in 1952. China is the largest trading partner with almost every country on earth. China's 70 years has witnessed the greatest economic transformation in human history. How did China do it? What were the guiding principles? What were the milestone events? Reform and opening up, beginning in 1978, establishing the socialist market economy, entering the World Trade Organization, integrating into the world economy, the Belt and Road Initiative, industrial transformation driven by science, technology, and IT. 2020 is indeed a meaningful year, the last year of the 13th five-year plan, the target year for eliminating all absolute poverty, and the final year for establishing a moderately prosperous society, China's first long-term national goal. What opportunities may come? What challenges lie ahead? What lessons to learn from China's recent history to apply to China's new era to be closer to China? How has China changed during the past 70 years? To explore this question, we visit a family where 3 generations worked or work in the same corporation, China Construction, 2nd Engineering Bureau. Her name is Zhang Jingyi, the 3rd generation of the family. Her duties cover office work, environmental protection, and construction site safety inspection and the like. Time to get off work. The next 3 days will be the meaningful Chinese Mid-Autumn Festival. Due to their workloads, both the 33-year-old Zhang Jingyi and her husband barely have time to look after their 5-year-old son. So they must leave him in Tangshan with her parents. Zhang Jingyi sees her son once a month. Three generations of the same family engaged in construction work. What differences have they experienced?
说个不好听的呢，算不上什么建筑啊。挖那个像东北整那个水社，挖个大坑，上头整一点的，半间在底下，半间在上头，那就住那样的嘛。
感觉总感觉我们那时候都是木头，都是木头的， 到过后呢，就是以钢代木了。
现在来说，可能相比下，它要粗糙一些吧，可能是没那么精致。只要是你把这工程完成了，安全了，或者是什么指标达到了，可能也就算了。
那像我们这一边，不光要把这个安全质量保证好，还要保证这个美观、实用、绿色环保，可能更加的这个科技智能化了。
Zhang Jingyi's parents were married in Tangshan in the 1980s, when they were relocated here in order to rebuild the city destroyed by the Tangshan earthquake in 1976. Both Zhang Jingyi's grandparents and parents own their own distributed housing.
当时是分的，1分钱不花呀，这个房子可是不花钱的房子，这是真正的福利房。
Welfare-oriented public housing distribution system was the way of allocating housing during China's planned economy. Apartment buildings built by enterprises or public institutions were distributed to the staff in the form of welfare based on their rank, length of service, age, and other conditions.
但是没保温之前啊，因为这毕竟是老房子，没保温之前屋里它还是挺冷的。冬天的时候，好像就是即便送着暖气，还得穿着小棉袄。
The apartment where Zhang Jingyi's parents and grandmother live now is 120 square meters.
敞亮，比这儿要暖和了。
条件也好。
条件也好了，有电梯了，老人也不用爬楼梯了。这个是没有无电梯的房子吗？老人也爬不上去。
In 1998, the State Council of China put an end to the era of the welfare-oriented public housing distribution system, and the development of commercialized housing supply was accelerated.
我的房子我要挑户型了，要挑这个阳光啊，是不是在哪面啊？然后再挑是不是全明户型啊？那个然后交通嘛也要看嘛，房价也要看，就是要看性价比嘛，肯定是挑的地方更多了一点了。
With the continuing improvement of the socialist market economy system over the years, housing markets experienced highs and lows. Housing construction across the country have reflected China's rapid growth. From simply having a place to sleep to living in progressively better conditions, this family of 3 generations tells the story of the great changes in China over the past 70 years, from having basic material needs to having ever-growing needs for a better life. To review China's 70 years economic journey, I interviewed Zhang Xingli, who served as former Deputy Director of Central Policy Research Office from 2000 to 2009, and Long Yong-tu, former Chief Negotiator for China's resumption of the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade, contracting party status, and its accession to the World Trade Organization. China's economy has changed significantly since the founding of the People's Republic of China. Can you summarize these changes over the past 70 years?
In a nutshell, the past 70 years have been magnificent and will go down in history as a witness of China's transition from a backward rural country to a country of industrialization and urbanization, from impoverishment to prosperity, from a planned economy to a market economy, and from a closed and semi-closed economy to an open economy.
If we have to summarize how it happened, the hard working of the Chinese, especially those from the rural areas, workers. Secondly, the opening up policy of economic reform policy, and thirdly, the urbanization process. I think that has changed the Chinese economy.
In a word, the first 30 years after the PRC was founded, we had both good experiences and hard lessons. The following next 40 years are a story of an economic boom.
In 1978, at the 3rd plenary session of the 11th Central Committee of the Communist Party of China, the new policy of reform and opening up established economic development as the country's primary national goal. Later, in 1992, the 14th CPC National Congress, committed to economic system reform, established a socialist market economy, which further enhanced China's capacity for economic growth.
Economic restructuring has been promoted through reform and, in turn, released the economic growth potential. That explains how China has made an economic miracle.
Coming up next, what would foreign companies operating in China say about the past 4 decades? In 1978, during his visit to Japan, Deng Xiaoping met Konosuke Matsushita, founder and chairman of Panasonic, the largest Japanese consumer electronics company, a meeting that enabled the following decades of Panasonic's growth in China. It also started the chapter of foreign companies playing an irreplaceable role in China's growth. To date, Panasonic has been operating in China for over 40 years. What has Panasonic witnessed?
I first came to the Chinese mainland in January 1989 for sightseeing. Back then, Shanghai didn't even have an expressway. Foreigners like us had to pay our bills with foreign exchange certificates. The taxis that would accommodate foreigners could only be hailed by the hotel receptionists. That's something unimaginable for today's young Chinese.
What difficulties has Panasonic faced in China? How have they been addressed?
We did go through a tough period, though we also face various difficulties today. When we first entered the Chinese market, the legal environment for the establishment of foreign enterprises was yet to be improved. It was quite difficult. We established a joint venture before setting up a wholly foreign-owned enterprise, which finally won the Chinese government's recognition.
With the establishment of the socialist market economy, the power of the market was released. By 1997, the mixed economic system was established, in which public ownership plays a dominant role and non-public enterprises could develop side by side. Through these transitions, how has the role of state-owned enterprises been changing? I interview Bert Hoffman, who served as former World Bank country director for China from 2014 to 2019.
Well, in the first phase, clearly with the planned economy as the main model in China in those days, state enterprises did play an important role in early industrialization. That didn't go that far, and it had its clear limitations, but up until 1978, clearly state enterprises were in the lead on industrial development. Since then, that lead has been largely taken over by the non-state sector. At first, collectives and township and village enterprises, but they were not the, if you want, they didn't have the scale to really compete with state enterprises. But by the time of the 1990s, when private ownership becomes important, when foreign ownership becomes important, really state enterprises are starting to play a much smaller role in industry than the private sector.
In 2013, China's SOE reform entered a new stage. The third plenary session of the 18th CPC Central Committee, held in 2013, ushered in the fourth stage of the SOE reform. That is to say, first, the management of state assets was to shift its focus from the management of enterprises to the management of capital. And second, SOEs were to draw in private enterprises and foreign companies to forge mixed ownership enterprises. Then, the managerial and technical backbone of mixed ownership enterprises were allowed to hold shares.
On December 11, 2001, China became the 143rd member of the World Trade Organization, the WTO. It is a historical certainty that China's accession to the WTO has driven its own development and accelerated the expansion of globalization. In 2001, China's total import and export volume was $0.51 trillion US, and in 2018, it was $4.62 trillion US, more than 8 times larger. According to a newly released white paper in China regarding the country's relationship with the world in the new era, China has become the most attractive investment destination, and any attempt to decouple China from the world economy will be harmful. I interviewed Chuan Zheju, former executive vice chairman of All China Federation of Industry and Commerce.
It took us decades to join the World Trade Organization. Since the beginning of the reform and opening up, we had tried to figure out what we would do when the rules came, meaning the competitors who would come here and try to eat us. Back then, the CPC Central Committee had the view that we could not sustain our development unless we opened up comprehensively. The problems and difficulties were temporary. Foreign capital, investment, and enterprises were quite assertive, but we were in a weak position to confront the competition from large transitional corporations. However, without such pressure, we could not grow.
I think the opening up policy throughout China's WTO deals has made a tremendous benefit, not only to the Chinese enterprises, more importantly to the consumers of the ordinary, the consumers of the Chinese. For instance, eventually we accept that we should lower down China's import tariff of car from average 70% to 25%, and then we should even cut down the tariff even lower. And also, more importantly, that we have decided to abolish the so-called quota system, and in order to liberalize the whole regime of importing the foreign cars. And more importantly, we have made major decisions to welcome all the major car manufacturers in the world to produce in the Chinese market. Now China is the biggest market of world in automobile and also the biggest producers.
The WTO sets international standards for China's economic management, for state enterprises, for market behavior, for foreigners' access to China's markets, and it becomes enormously important. With that, China becomes, if you want, the platform for the whole of the Asia production structure, and therefore becomes very competitive. Exports soar, foreign investment soars, and China gets a growth rate in its income that supersedes 10% of every year. So a tremendous successful entry in the WTO.
In its 2018 report to Congress on China's WTO compliance, the U.S. Trade Representatives, USTR, criticized China, stating China did not internalize the open market norms of the WTO community, resisting calls for further liberalization of its trade regime by claiming to be a developing country, and having done severe harm to other WTO members and the multilateral trading system, etc. How do you respond to such criticism? How would you characterize China's fulfillment of its WTO compliance obligations?
I think whether or not China's fulfill its commitment in its WTO agreement, it is not one country to say yes or no. We have to listen to the majority of WTO members and the majority of the country to see what are their comments. So during the years immediately after China's getting into WTO, there was an annual review of China's performance of commitment in Geneva. And we hope that the United States could go to Geneva and try to find all these papers which include conclusions of all the WTO members' comment on China's performance in fulfilling its WTO commitment.
At the third plenary session of the 18th Central Committee in 2013, it focused on comprehensively deepening reform. It stressed making the market play a decisive role in resource allocation, and the government role should play a more efficient role. What is your analysis of that statement?
First of all, I think the third plenum of the 18-Party Congress really states the real issue. And whether it solves the real issue still remains to be seen. So there is this statement, indeed, the market should play a decisive role in the allocation of factors, but at the same time, state ownership should play a leading role in the economy. And for some, that would be a contradiction. And frankly, I think we're still struggling on how to exactly strike the right balance. It's early days, and maybe people will figure it out on how to match that balance. But clearly, China's path is quite different from the Western path. And I'm not saying that China shouldn't have industrial policies. In fact, many Western countries have industrial policies themselves. They just have different instruments, and they also have rules and regulations about instruments. And in that, if you want, array of instruments, state enterprises don't play a role in Western countries.
Coming up next, in the new era, the Belt and Road is China's new global initiative. What role does it play in the international arena? Looking back, if we say reform and opening up and China's entry into the WTO greatly helped bring China and the world closer economically, then looking forward, the Belt and Road Initiative is greatly integrating China with many countries, especially developing countries across Asia and Africa. To date, China has signed Belt and Road cooperation documents with over 127 countries and 29 international organizations. How does the Belt and Road Initiative impact China and other countries?
The Belt and Road Initiative was first made as a part of China's domestic regional development, because during the last few decades we see that the coast areas develop very fast, but our west part and the middle part develop less quickly. So if you look at the map, if we want our Inner Mongolia or our Xinjiang and our Yunnan, Guangxi and Sichuan, all these areas open up to the world. We have to find their cooperation partners. So in the process of finding the cooperation partner, we see that they have to cooperate with Russia, with Middle Asia, and also Southeast Asia, southern part of Asia. So it's beneficial first to the Chinese, but however, it is also an initiative beneficiary to those countries which cooperate with China.
According to the estimate of the Asian Development Bank, it will require $20 trillion to meet the infrastructure investment needs for Asian countries alone. The current funding is less than 5% of what it demands. So how can we correct such a wide financing gap? Cooperation is the only way through. That is why the Belt and Road Initiative proposed by China has been warmly welcomed.
A lot of these investments, they do require quite a bit of capital. A lot of the state enterprises can bring up the capital to make those very big investments work. So in that sense, there is a disproportionate amount of state enterprises involved. But that does not necessarily have to be a bad thing, because a lot of the investments that are being made under the Belt and Road are very good, and they are both good for the host country as well as for the Chinese enterprises. We believe at the East Asian Institute is that if China further opens up competition for the investment, it will be even better for recipient countries, because they can benefit from a more competitive price among the contractors.
China has set the goal of basically realizing modernization by 2035 and a modern socialist power by 2050. In your view, how would the realization of these goals affect China and the world?
By 2022, if China can join the rank of high-income countries, it would have great impact on the world. Today, a mere 15% of the global population is living in high-income countries. With 18% of the global population being Chinese nationals, if China can emerge as a high-income country, it means that 33% of the global population, more than double the current percentage, would live in high-income countries.
Probably many foreign enterprises saw China simply as a production hub, but currently it is shifting into a major consumer. From my perspective, China's unique feature is as a manufacturing power, and it is playing an increasingly important role in the world's economic growth. As we set up the Panasonic China and Northeast Asia Company, I'm stationing in Beijing now. Building a connection with China, a major manufacturing and innovation power, is our principal mission.
It's a good thing that China continues to strive to do better, and China looking forward at 2035 and gradually bringing concrete plans into place and further modernization is good for China, and it can also be very, very good for the world.
Looking ahead from China 2020 to China 2050, what can we learn from new China's 70 years? What driving principles have enabled China's economic miracle? Here are 6. 1. A people who work long and hard to improve the lives of their families and the destiny of their country. 2. The leadership of the Communist Party of China, a one-party leadership system that enforces political stability and formulates and implements strategy. 3. Reform and opening up policies which encourage economic development and innovation. 4. A vision that sets long-term goals, midterm objectives, and short-term policies that are monitored and modified continuously. Policies that need long-term commitment have long-term commitment. 5. A way of thinking that experiments and tests before implementing and rolling out. And 6. A willingness to admit and correct errors. What about the challenges of the new era? How to achieve the second national goal of complete modernization and great rejuvenation? In 2006, then Zhejiang Party Secretary Xi Jinping told me, "It's fair to say that we have achieved some successes. Nevertheless, we should cautiously appraise our accomplishments. We should never overestimate our accomplishments." He called for China to aspire to our next higher goal, and he described the process as persistent and unremitting. Looking ahead from China 2020 to China 2050, President Xi Jinping is sending the same message. In the next episode, we examine China's ecological development to be closer to China.